Wednesday morning here on KSJE, and it's time to take our weekly trip to the Encouragement Lab. Dr. Mike Hadabaugh, there he is standing by in the lab this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Last week, you had a little lesson for us about emotions and how to try to deal with them with our partners. And this week, it's kind of a follow-up on that. And we're going to talk a little bit about avoidance, maybe, of some of these emotions, right?
Yeah, I mean, you raised a great question during last week's interview that, what about people that, avoid those? Is this right for everybody? And I said, well, this is right for people that are experiencing conflict. So go watch last week's or listen to last week's,
right.
On how to handle conflict if you tend to be more volatile in your conflict. This week, we're going to talk about avoidance. So people that want to go and bury everything. It's like, we never deal, we don't have any conflict. Everybody's, I think of some of the political leaders around the world that say, we don't have any of those kind of people in our country.
Right.
It's just outright denial of, we don't have any problems. We just get along great.
Right.
And those are lies we tell ourselves. Because
right.
If you interact with any human being for any length of time, trust me, you're going to have issues that you need to deal with.
Okay. And so how do we do that? I mean, avoidance is not the answer.
Well, so the way to do that is, so most people that avoid things, they get so internally emotional that they flee. So, this is the old fight or flight mechanism. And so last week we talked about the fighters. This week we want to talk about the fleers.
Okay.
And so first of all, it's really hard for a fleer to quit fleeing.
Right.
So a lot of times the other person is the one that says, hey, we can't keep running from this problem. So one of the ways to do that is to set up a scheduled time to discuss it.
Okay.
So to say, okay, well, I get that right now you don't really want it. You're angry. You're feeling the strong emotion. Let's don't talk about it right now, but let's set a schedule. So we will talk about it tomorrow at such and such time.
I see. And that is important, right, to be able to do that at a mutually agreeable time, right?
Very important, because what that does is, hey, we're going to set aside a time, set aside the emotion, and yet we're going to look at it as an issue and say, here's what it is.
Okay.
And let's deal with that. Another thing that's helpful, and I show this oftentimes with like a Kleenex or something, a Kleenex box, but like right now I'm showing my phone. But like another good technique is to say, let's take this problem that we have that we don't want to talk about, and let's put it on the table. So let's say this phone represents our anger, we never talk about how we spend our money. We just go and spend it. We're always broke.
Okay. So that's
our partner.
Yeah,
our partner doesn't want to talk about that ever. So
okay.
One of the ways to do it is say, this phone represents our money that we're spending. And you take it and you put it on the table and you set it down in the middle of the table and say, let's look at our problem. That phone is our problem. What are we going to do about that problem? So it's not we're looking eye to eye and going, you spend too much money. Well, you are always telling me what to do with my money. It's, no, let's look at that. So it seems like there's never enough money to pay the bills. How can we fix that? So we're looking at the problem instead of each other. And that's another great technique to get a fleer to talk about the actual issue.
Okay. That sounds like good advice. And so as you work through all that, don't men and women deal with this stuff a little bit differently?
Sometimes. I think it's more a personality base about whether or not you're a natural fleer or a confronter.
Okay.
And again, if you look at the passive aggressive bell curve, about half of us normally like to flee and about half of us normally like to confront. And there's various degrees of that. Some people that's their only MO is we're going to confront, and some people, they will run from everything. But realize most of us can handle confrontation if you handle it in a nice manner where they don't feel threatened. And that's why those two techniques of setting a time, and then if you have to say, hey, we're going to talk about this problem, and we're not going to talk about each other. It's how do we solve this problem together? And again, I'm talking mostly from a couple point of view, but you can do that at your office too. It's like, so how do we solve the problem? So let's say you've got a small group of people, and that 2 or 3 of the 5 or 6 people in your office are always taking advantage of the fact that they can show up late and nothing ever happens.
Right.
So that's just an example.
Yeah.
Well, one of these to deal with that, instead of saying, okay, let's confront the 2 or 3 people that are always late, or, because there's always this resentment under the table. It's you go into a room and you put on the table, okay, so we have an issue in our office of time. And some people value time and they take seriously the time to start seriously, and other people seem to be taking advantage of that. So how can we solve that? And you're looking at it at the table, and so you're not blaming. So yeah, there's that certain someone in the corner that always gets away with being here 30 minutes late, right?
Right.
And those tensions are in every office in the country, every single one. That, you know, some form of that. Maybe not time, but it's who takes, you know, drinks all the coffee without refilling it, or there's always those. So if you just get in the room and talk about the issue, how do we solve the problem of the coffee pot is never refilled when someone empties it? How do we solve that problem?
Right.
Well,
Okay.
we can solve it with a camera, so we can find out who did it, and then you have fun with the consequences. So it's like if the camera catches you emptying the pot, you have to buy everybody lunch next Tuesday.
Interesting. Right.
You know, so
that would
you
do
come
it.
up with
That would do it.
Yeah, and so what it is, it's not a we're targeting you. You're the only one that ever leaves coffee pot empty. It's we're all going to agree that this is the consequence. That seems to be an issue. Instead of saying you're the person that caused this to be here right now, instead it becomes this thing, and ironically it'll still be that person doing it, but now you said, hey, you agreed, you made this agreement that you'd buy us lunch, and
There you go.
yeah, I'll have Jimmy John's, thank you,
There
or whoever
Right.
is sponsoring KSJE today. That's what we'll have.
Perfect. And there you go. And you have witnesses, so you're bound to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like good advice, Dr. Hadabaugh, and it is good advice, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. That is Dr. Mike Hadabaugh. He is with us every Wednesday from the Encouragement Lab right here on KSJE, Farmington.
Did you know that the KSJE has a variety of music other than the classical style, such as folk, blues, jazz, and world music? Keep listening to